Hello again. In this lecture video, we're going to go over fruits. And again, this is for both field botany and plant biology. So we're not going to cover all fruit types. This is just going to be an introduction, and field botany people will go into a lot more detail later. So let's start looking at fruits. And remember, ovules develop into seeds after fertilization, and the ovary will develop into a fruit. Now remember that you've been asked to, if possible, gather a couple of fruits or a few fruits, and one of the ones I was hoping you could get was a bean, just a regular old bean, because we'll look at that first as an example of a fruit. So a fruit is a ripened ovary, and we can first talk about the ovary wall, which is called the pericarp, around the carpel, right? That's what that means, pericarp. And sometimes we'll divide this ovary wall into different layers, the outer layer, the middle, and the inner, exocarp, mesocarp, endocarp, but most of the time we won't. It's only if there's something very unusual about that particular layer. Now, a bean is a legume, okay? It is a type of fruit, which we will learn. And I've opened up this bean here so you can see a seed. So just don't use a razor blade, but just peel it apart with your fingers, and maybe you'll have better luck than I did here. But you can see seeds in here. Sometimes you'll see ovules that failed to develop or started to develop and then stopped. And of course, the ovary wall. Now, this region here is where the seed was attached, and that's called the placenta, okay? Just like in animals, we have a placenta here. It's where the offspring, okay, the embryo inside the seed is attached to the ovary wall. There is also called a funiculus. It's the little stalk of the ovular seed, which you can't see here, and I really can't show it on this diagram either. But in this legume fruit, you can see through it, and you can see an ovule there, and that little stalk is the funiculus. It's what attaches it to the rest of the ovary. Okay, so make sure you follow along with your fruit lab in Bio 412 lab manual or in field botany. And so we're going to define some terms. There's always terminology. A simple fruit is a fruit that comes from one pistil, not carpel, but pistil, one single female structure. But we sometimes have compound fruits where you have several pistils holding together to make the larger fruit. Anyone like pineapple? I love pineapple. Well, pineapple, you have a whole inflorescence, a whole group of flowers, each flower with its own pistil, and that whole thing becomes the pineapple. All that tissue becomes really sweet and good to eat. And so that is what's called a multiple fruit, when you have multiple flowers adhering together to make the fruit. However, you can also have what's called an aggregate fruit, where you have multiple pistils in one flower. We saw some examples of that in the previous video. But those pistils all adhere together as the fruit develops, and so that is an aggregate fruit. We also have accessory fruits. I'll just say that those are fruits in which other parts make up a big part of the fruit. That is, other parts besides the ovary wall, etc. So we'll get to those in a little bit. So let's take a look at a simple fruit. We have fruit from one pistil, and yes, a tomato is a fruit, botanically speaking. So here we have this tomato cut open, and this is the pericarp, this fleshy stuff around here. And sometimes we have partitions, and the partition is called a septum. So there's one septum, there's another, and there's another. Plural is septa. And then the compartment that those septa wall off is called a locule. A locule is a compartment. It's often equivalent to one carpel, and that is true in this case. So we actually have three compartments, three carpels that were fused together to make this one fruit. Now in tomatoes, oftentimes the placenta has been enlarged to make it a more meaty tomato, not just all runny. So that's the placenta, but it's bigger than normal, okay? And those are the developing seeds. Now I want to talk briefly about the arrangement of the seeds or ovules in the fruit. And this is called placentation because they're attached by the placenta. So these are just two main types of placentation here. There's other types, but in axile, this is okra over here. In axile, it's kind of like a bicycle wheel. You have the center, and then you have spokes. Those are the septa. And then your seeds are attached to the center, okay? So you always have the septa and the seeds are attached to the center. It could be, 3 compartments, 5 compartments, however many this is, looks like 7 compartments, but that's axile placentation, not axial, axile, okay? And I know we have a lot of terms that sound alike. In parietal placentation, here's the ovary wall where the seeds attach. They're not attached to the center. There, you can see the little funiculi attached to the ovary wall. So this is called parietal, where the seeds are attached to the pericarp, the ovary wall. They may have septa like this one does, or they may not, but the defining feature is the seeds that are attached to the ovary wall, to the outside. And there's also basal and some other things. Now we're going to look at dry fruits as well as fleshy fruits. So dry fruits, at maturity, the ovary wall will be dry, and so it's made of dead cells. You wouldn't want to eat it at maturity. Some of the dry fruits will open up and release the seeds, and the seeds will be dispersed individually. And that is called dehiscent. Dehiscent. Others will not open up, and the whole fruit will be dispersed as a unit, and that's indehiscent. Not indecent, but indehiscent. All right. So we'll talk about dry fruits, dehiscent, indehiscent. And then typically the ones we like to eat are fleshy fruits, where the fruits are fleshy at maturity. So they have often sugary, sometimes starchy tissue there that we like to eat. Now, we are going to learn more specific types of fruits. So if I ask you a fruit type, you should always answer the more specific term. So for Bio 402, we're just going to learn these. These are not that many, believe it or not. And then we'll go on in more detail for field botany. So let's start with a dry dehiscent fruit. And this is going to be made of a simple pistil. And this simple pistil, right, it means it's made of one carpel. So a pistil made of one carpel. And it's going to open along one suture line, only one line. Now, these are 2 different species, okay? This is a picture I got of the narrow-leaf milkweed that's opening up. And so imagine your hands together, and you only open along one side of where your 2 hands go together. This is a follicle. And you can't quite see that here. Maybe you can. I don't know. My pointer, where is it? There we go. You can see right there is where it's split open, and it's leaning back there. And these are the seeds with the tufts of hair on them. So follicle. Pistil of one carpel, opens along one suture line. Milkweed, good examples if you know that. Legumes are also dry fruits, and we have a simple pistil, again, one carpel, but instead of opening on one suture line, it opens along 2, okay, 2 lines on opposite sides, in most cases, okay? So all of the pea family plants have legumes as their fruits. But you think, well, wait, don't we eat legumes? We do. But when we're eating the pods or the legumes, we're making sure we get them before they're mature, because if they are mature, they're going to look something like this, and we're not going to want to eat that. So this is actually a lupin, which you shouldn't eat anyway, but here's a nice immature fruit. The 2 suture lines would be on this side and this side. Here it is maturing, and we have an open fruit, and just what happened there is it twists when it opens. So these are all open fruits. They opened on 2 suture lines. And this is just lovely native plant, fairy duster. These generally don't, oh no, they do open up, I'm sorry, they do, but it takes a while for them to open up, so on both sides there. And you can see the seeds inside, they're developing. And Western redbuds, okay, I already had this slide in here. Immature fruit, mature fruits. Going on to capsules. There are a lot of capsules out there when you're looking at fruit types. So capsules, we have a compound pistil. So we've got more than one carpel in there. The number of carpels varies, okay? And it's dry and it opens up. And it can open up in various ways. We're not going to worry about that, at least in plant biology. But you can have these lines where it opens up. You can have pores where it opens up. Okay, but in this case, we have three carpels fused together in this calochortus. In class, we have some of these poppy capsules, but people have shook the seeds out because in these poppy capsules, we have openings of pores, and the seeds actually shake out of those pores. Now, each one of these segments actually represents a carpel, so there are many carpels in each capsule. And this is a flannel bush, Fremontodendron if you want to know, and these are capsules that are opening up. You can see it opened up here also. Okay, going on to indehiscent. Okay, as I believe I said, we're moving on to dry indehiscent fruits, ones that do not open up to release seeds. And a real common type is an achene. This is dry indehiscent, one-seeded fruit from a one-chambered ovary. Okay, it doesn't say how many carpels make it up. In fact, this is from sunflower, and there's two carpels that were fused together, but it's a one-chambered ovary. So when you get so-called sunflower seeds, if you think these are the seeds, these are actually sunflower fruits. These are achenes, and if you crack this open with your teeth and you eat only the kernel, those are the seeds. So they're achenes. Amaze your friends. Okay, all grasses have achenes as their fruits, and grasses, we eat a lot of them: wheat, rye, rice, corn, but they're also just important in the ecosystems. All right, we can further say not only they're achenes, but there's special types of achenes. If you want to know, they're called grains because the ovary wall adheres to the seed. It's not loose, the seed's not loose in there, but they are achenes. So we are omitting nuts from our plant biology class, but I just want to tell you that a lot of things that are called nuts are not really nuts. So peanuts are not nuts, okay? Look it up, find out what peanuts are. And we're going to go on to fleshy fruits. All right, fleshy fruits. So a very common fleshy fruit is a berry. And surprise, surprise, tomatoes are berries. So in a berry, all that means is the entire ovary wall, the entire pericarp is fleshy. So we already looked at this picture. Notice we had three carpels fused in this one. Notice in this one, we've got two. So cut open your tomatoes. See how many carpels are in there. It's kind of cool. And see that nice enlarged placenta. But main thing is this pericarp is fleshy, so it's a berry. Kiwi is also a berry. Yeah, good tasting berry. All right. What is the placentation? Can you see? Looks like they're attached to the middle, so that would be axile, and you have these septa. Look at each locule, each one of these represents a carpel. So there are many carpels fused together in this kiwi. Cactus fruits, the tunas. Okay, here's the nice fruit here coming from the inferior ovary of the flower. These are also berries. I'd stay away from them unless you have things to handle them so you don't get spiked. Okay, I hate to burst the bubble. Strawberries are not berries. Okay, a lot of things we call berries are not berries. So notice we have green sepals here. And if you look between those and the rest of this red fleshy thing, you may see the stamens. And then you have this red fleshy thing and then these things that we call the seeds. Well, those are actually the fruits. Those are achenes. The fleshy red thing is a receptacle that is enlarged and good tasting. And so we have an aggregate that is multiple pistils from one flower, an aggregate of achenes. Yeah, amaze your friends. Okay, drupes. Oh, drupes. A lot of good drupes to eat, but also non-edible ones too. So usually we have a one-seeded fruit, not always, but in this case, it's a one-seeded fruit. And the thing that we often think of as the seed is more than the seed. This is a stony endocarp with the seed inside. And so if you're real industrious, you can crack those open and find the seed inside, but be careful when you're doing that. And then the mesocarp and possibly the exocarp is fleshy, or in some cases fibrous. In this case, it's fleshy. Okay, this is a nice peach, yellow peach. Any of the so-called stone fruits, cherries, plums, peaches, okay, nectarines, those are drupes, okay. Coconuts are also drupes. They look a little bit different because we have all this fiber stuff on the outside rather than fleshy. Here's the stony endocarp, and actually most of the fiber has been removed here. But if you see the entire thing, this is the stony endocarp. No, actually, I think we have all the fiber there. Sorry about that. Stony endocarp, and the white stuff inside. There's usually white meat and white liquid. The liquid is liquid endosperm, and as it ages, it solidifies. So you get more of the white coconut meat. The other thing is that I should mention, these three eyes or locations are where you can potentially find an embryo. There will be an embryo at one of them. And so when we crack these open in class, I do it rather untraditionally. I use a hammer so that it cracks and we can hopefully find the embryo. We often do, okay. Almonds are also drupes. You hardly ever see the entire fruit unless you're watching them growing. I have some pictures of those in another presentation. But let's go on to pomes. P-O-M-E, not poem, but pomes. Apples are pomes, okay? And you have to have an inferior ovary, okay? And there's more to the definition, but let's look at this first. So if you have the stem here, and then you look at the other side, these are the sepals, and you may also find stamens there. So if you hold it so that the sepals are on the top side, okay, you can see the sepals would be above where the swollen part is, where the ovary is. Okay, so it's an inferior ovary, but this is also an accessory fruit. So most of the stuff making up the apple is not the ovary wall. What is it? Well, it's the hypanthium that actually was fused to the ovary to make it inferior. So it's the sepals, the petals, the stamen tissue that was fused to that inferior ovary. And that's what becomes nice and fleshy and is the majority of the apple that we eat if you eat apples. You should eat an apple a day. Keep the doctor away, right? Okay, we already talked about pineapples briefly. So here's our pineapple. Each one of these sections came from a separate flower. So this is an entire inflorescence. So this is a multiple, and it's a multiple of berries. All this is juicy. Really good. Did you figure out peanuts? They're legumes. So actually the flowers are above ground and then they plant themselves underground as they go to fruit. And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this.